Massive stones older than history stand silent across the world. They form a hidden chronology of megalithic architecture that connects continents and rewrites our deepest past. By the end of this, you will see a map of human history you never knew existed. Why do nearly identical stone structures appear on separate continents, built thousands of years apart by people who supposedly never met? We will journey from a Turkish hilltop that predates agriculture to Pacific islands where giants were walked into place. This is the untold story written in stone. What single human desire do you think could inspire such a monumental effort across the entire globe? These are not simply big rocks. The term megalithic architecture refers to a specific and profound human achievement, the deliberate construction using massive stones, often fitted together without any mortar to bind them. Think of a single standing stone, a menhir, planted deep into the earth as a silent sentinel. Then picture a dolmen, a table-like structure of immense capstones resting on supporting stones, creating a chamber that has endured for millennia. The scale and variety are breathtaking, from solitary markers to vast, chambered tombs and intricate stone circles. What makes them truly fascinating is not just their size, but the clear intention behind them. These are not random piles, they are precise creations that required a deep, working knowledge of engineering. Just consider the process. Quarrying a stone weighing many tons is one thing. Moving it, sometimes over miles of difficult terrain, is another feat entirely. And then lifting it, positioning it with astonishing accuracy, all without modern machinery, speaks to a level of social organization and technical skill that we are only beginning to appreciate. It suggests communities capable of unified action, led by individuals who understood leverage, geometry, and perhaps even the movements of the stars. This foundational craft, this shared language of stone, appears on coastlines and mountaintops across the world. How could such a complex idea, this impulse to build in such a monumental way, emerge in seemingly separate corners of the ancient world? The stones themselves are the first clue in a much larger mystery. To understand the true scale of this mystery, we must journey to a windswept hill in southeastern Turkey. Here, at a place called Göbekli Tepe, the entire timeline of human civilization is rewritten. This is not a city or a fortress, but a temple complex constructed over 11,000 years ago, a staggering 7 millennia before the Great Pyramids of Egypt. The builders were not settled farmers but hunter-gatherers, people we once believed were solely focused on day-to-day survival, yet they achieved the seemingly impossible. They quarried and shaped enormous limestone pillars, some weighing over 10 tons, and arranged them into great stone circles. These are not crude monuments. The pillars are masterfully carved into distinct T-shapes and covered with exquisite bas-reliefs of animals, foxes, scorpions, and birds, a menagerie frozen in stone. This reveals a symbolic world, a shared mythology complex enough to motivate a monumental labor. The sophistication on display is utterly breathtaking for its era. Then, around 8,000 years before the Common Era, the people who built this wonder did something just as puzzling. They deliberately and carefully buried their entire creation under tons of earth, preserving it for millennia until its rediscovery. Why would a culture invest such incredible effort into a sacred space, only to consign it to a hidden slumber? This single site shatters the long-held belief that agriculture first gave humans the stability and surplus to build complex societies. It suggests the reverse may be true, that the collective effort of building these sacred sites, the need to feed and organize large groups of workers, may have actually sparked the invention of farming. Göbekli Tepe stands as a profound starting point, a whisper from a lost age proving that the human desire to build on a grand, symbolic scale is far more ancient than we ever dreamed. If this was happening in one corner of the world, what other echoes of this forgotten knowledge might we find? Far to the west, another layer of this ancient story was being written in stone. Along the wild Atlantic coast of Europe, a distinct tradition of megalithic architecture arose, creating a vast and connected cultural facade. In the region of Brittany, France, the landscape is dominated by the staggering alignments of Karnak. Here, nearly 3,000 standing stones were placed in long, precise parallel rows, stretching for kilometers across the countryside. This was not a single event, but a sustained effort beginning around 4,500 years before the Common Era. The sheer scale is almost incomprehensible, a monumental project that would have required generations of coordinated labor. At the same time, on the Iberian Peninsula in what is now Portugal, a similar explosion of construction was underway. Thousands of dolmens, those chambered tombs of massive capstones, and solitary menhirs were erected across the land. One of the most profound sights is the Olmender's cromlech, a complex arrangement of rounded stones set in oval patterns, older than its famous counterpart, Stonehenge. What connects these distant locations is more than just the presence of big stones. The architectural styles, the use of chambered tombs for collective burial, and the very practice of creating long stone alignments are strikingly consistent. This points to something profound, a coherent cultural phenomenon shared along the seaways. It suggests a network of communication where ideas, beliefs, and technical knowledge traveled with the people who sailed the Atlantic coasts. This shared knowledge base, this common understanding of how to build and why to build, hints at a unified belief system that spanned thousands of kilometers. The Atlantic facade stands as powerful evidence that our ancient ancestors were not isolated. They were connected by ocean highways, exchanging not just goods but the very blueprints for monumental architecture. If such a network could flourish along one ocean's edge, what other seas might have served as conduits for this hidden chronology of stone? Yet the story of stone does not belong to a single continent or one coastline. A different chapter of this hidden chronology was being written deep within the Mediterranean Sea. Here, on the small island of Malta, lies one of the most bewildering ancient structures ever discovered, the Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum. This is not a structure built from stone blocks, but something even more incredible, an entire underground sanctuary painstakingly carved and excavated from the living limestone bedrock. Its creation began around 6,000 years ago. Think of the dedication required to hollow out 3 sprawling subterranean levels using only stone tools, creating a labyrinth of ornate chambers, halls, and alcoves that descend into the earth. This was far more than a simple tomb. It was a place of ceremony and perhaps even of sound. Certain chambers within the Hypogeum possess a haunting acoustic property, where a single spoken voice can resonate throughout the entire complex, creating an otherworldly echo that must have deeply affected those gathered there. This was architecture designed to manipulate experience, to create a specific atmosphere for rituals we can only try to understand. While this was happening on Malta, a very different megalithic language was being spoken on the island of Menorca. Here, the dominant structures are the Taulas, unique formations that consist of 2 massive stones, a large vertical pillar with a perfectly balanced horizontal slab placed on top, forming a colossal T-shape that was always enclosed within a horseshoe-shaped sanctuary. The purpose of the Taulas remains a captivating puzzle, but their distinctive form is unmistakable. So we have 2 neighboring islands, both part of the same Mediterranean world, yet each developed a completely unique architectural expression. One reached deep into the earth to create a resonant, hidden world, while the other reached for the sky with its monumental T-shaped tables. This presents a fascinating question. Was this a case of independent innovation, where separate cultures arrived at their own monumental solutions driven by local beliefs and needs? Or does it point to a broader megalithic idea, a shared impulse that traveled across the sea, only to be adapted and transformed into highly localized forms by each island community? The Mediterranean, with its easy sea routes, acted as a crucible for this diversity. It suggests a network where the core concept of building big with stone was exchanged, but the final design was always a local dialect. This reveals our ancient ancestors not as blind followers of a single blueprint, but as creative architects interpreting a powerful idea through the lens of their own world. If the Mediterranean was such a vibrant hub of megalithic experimentation, what happens when we search for these ideas in a land that was considered utterly isolated from the rest of the world? The story of stone takes a dramatic turn on the windswept Salisbury Plain in Britain. Here stands Stonehenge, a monument so familiar it can obscure its true nature, a profound enigma built not in one grand vision but in a slow, deliberate accumulation over more than 1,500 years. Its story begins around 3,000 years before the Common Era, not with towering stones, but with a simple circular ditch and bank, a sacred enclosure marking the land. For centuries, it was a place of timber structures and cremation burials, an evolving cemetery. Then, centuries after the first earthwork was dug, the iconic stones arrived. The smaller bluestones, weighing up to 4 tons each, were transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a journey of over 150 miles across rugged terrain. How they were moved remains one of archaeology's great puzzles, whether by sledges, rollers, or even partially by water. Later still, the truly massive sarsen stones were erected, local sandstone slabs weighing an average of 25 tons, shaped and capped with lintels to form the famous outer circle and inner horseshoe. This was not a single project but a layered legacy. Recent analysis of the remains found there suggests it was primarily a place of burial and ancestral veneration, and the blue stones were believed to possess healing properties, drawing pilgrims from across the island seeking solace and connection. Stonehenge was not a static sculpture. It was a dynamic, living center of ritual that grew and changed with the culture that nurtured it, its purpose shifting across generations. This concept of a monument as a living, evolving entity, rather than a finished artifact, is a key to understanding the hidden chronology written in stone across the globe. But the sophistication of these ancient astronomers was not confined to a single island. On the remote western edge of Scotland, the Callanish stones rise from the peat like a petrified forest. Erected around 2,900 years before the Common Era, this complex is not a simple circle, but a breathtaking, cross-shaped arrangement of towering stones, with a central monolith reaching over 4.5 meters high. It is a structure that speaks a language of celestial motion. While Stonehenge is famously aligned with the sun, Callanish is a masterwork of lunar observation. Its avenues and rows are precisely oriented to capture the moon's most extreme and rhythmic dance. Every 18.6 years, a viewer standing at its heart would witness a profound event, the full moon seeming to skim the southern hills, rolling along the horizon before dipping out of sight, only to reappear moments later. This is not a vague alignment, it is a meticulously encoded calendar, built in stone to track a cycle that takes nearly a generation to complete. The builders of Callanish possessed a deep, generational knowledge of astronomy, a specialized scientific tradition that allowed them to predict and monumentalize this long celestial rhythm. This forces a dramatic shift in how we see them. They were not primitive stone raisers, they were accomplished sky watchers, architects of a cosmic clock. This level of precision reveals a society capable of preserving complex knowledge across centuries, turning abstract celestial patterns into a permanent physical reality. If such a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos could flourish in the North Atlantic, where else might we find its echoes? The trail of this astronomical genius does not end in Scotland. It leads us across the ocean to a continent where another civilization was looking to the very same sky and building its own answer in the earth. Deep beneath an earthen mound in Ireland, a stone passage waits in darkness for a single, fleeting moment each year. This is Newgrange, a passage tomb constructed over 5,000 years ago. At the winter solstice, as the sun crests the horizon, a slender beam of light penetrates a specially designed opening above the entrance, a roof box. For 17 precious minutes, this golden shaft travels down the long corridor to illuminate the central chamber, a symbolic rebirth of light at the year's darkest point. This was no accident. It was precise astronomical engineering, a fusion of architecture and celestial rhythm that transformed a tomb into a cosmic clock. Far to the north, on Scotland's Orkney Islands, the chambered cairn of Micho echoes this mastery of underground space. Its massive stones are arranged with such skill that they form a corbelled roof, each layer cantilevering inward until the space is sealed high above, a testament to stoneworking genius. Its story did not end with its builders. Centuries later, Vikings seeking shelter broke in and left their mark, carving runic graffiti into the walls. One inscription even boasts of a hidden treasure, connecting one age of explorers to another across millennia. Meanwhile, in southern Spain, the Antiquara Dolmens present a different kind of grandeur. Here, enormous chambers built of colossal stone slabs were entirely covered by man-made hills, creating permanent artificial landscapes dedicated to the ancestors. What unites these distant sites from Ireland to Spain is a profound shift in purpose. These were more than resting places for the departed. They were portals conceived as gateways between the world of the living and the realm of the afterlife. They were territorial markers, their immense scale proclaiming the power and lineage of the families who built them. And most brilliantly, they were calendars in stone, aligning the cycles of human life with the eternal motions of the sun and moon. This shared focus on the afterlife and cosmic time forms a powerful thematic thread, a common spiritual language spoken in stone across thousands of miles. It reveals a universal human yearning to make sense of our place in the vast cycles of existence. If this deep-seated desire could produce such synchronized structures across Europe, what happens when we look for its echo on the other side of the world? Far to the east, on the forested slopes of the North Caucasus Mountains, a different chapter of the stone story was quietly unfolding. Built between 3,000 and 2,000 years before the Common Era, thousands of dolmens stand with a strange and silent uniformity. These are not the open circles of Britain or the grand chambers of Iberia. They are compact, box-like structures, meticulously assembled from massive, finely shaped stone slabs. Most striking of all is their signature feature, a single, perfectly circular hole carved through the front slab, like a stone porthole looking into a dark interior. This consistent design is repeated across a vast and rugged landscape, a testament to a shared culture with a very specific architectural vision. Yet, the people who built them remain one of history's great enigmas. We have their monumental work, but we have lost their names, their language, and the full story of their lives. This has led to a fascinating debate that continues to this day. Were these sealed chambers tombs for revered elders, their remains placed inside for a sacred journey? or were they ritual spaces where the living could communicate with ancestral spirits through that single, symbolic portal? The sheer number of these structures suggests they were central to the community's identity, a physical anchor for their beliefs. Their existence here at this later date presents a critical puzzle for the hidden chronology. This was a clear and powerful flowering of megalithic culture, but it appears isolated, a solitary island of stone in the Eurasian steppe, so we are left with a profound question. Did the people of the Caucasus independently conceive of the same monumental idea, driven by a universal human impulse to build in stone for their gods and their dead? Or does the precision of their design hint at a different story, one of knowledge carried along ancient trade routes, a blueprint that traveled from the west and was then perfected in this mountain homeland? The Caucasian dolmens stand as a mysterious bridge in time and space. They force us to look further, to trace the potential paths this knowledge may have taken as it moved deeper into the vast and waiting continent of Asia. A world away from the Atlantic's edge, the megalithic impulse found powerful expression in the rich soils of the Indian subcontinent. From around 1200 years before the Common Era, a vibrant and distinct megalithic culture began to flourish across South India, leaving behind a remarkable legacy written in granite. This was not a single monolithic tradition but a diverse tapestry of forms, each speaking to a complex social world. The landscape became dotted with dolmens, their great capstones creating sheltered chambers. Cairn circles, rings of stone rubble marking sacred ground, covered communal resting places. Long, parallel rows of standing stones marched across the earth, creating alignments that may have charted both the heavens and the lineage of the families who built them. These sites were often collective memorials, final resting places for multiple individuals, and they frequently contained artifacts of iron, firmly linking this monumental tradition to the dawn of the local Iron Age. This connection suggests a society in transition, harnessing new technologies while holding fast to ancient, symbolic practices. But the story does not end with tombs. A truly unique feature of this culture is the hero stone. For centuries, long after the primary era of megalithic construction had passed, communities continued to erect carved stone slabs to commemorate individuals, often marking acts of valor or sacrifice. This practice reveals a profound cultural continuity, a thread that connects the ancient communal burials to later, more personal memorials. It shows a society that never truly abandoned the language of stone, instead adapting it to honor individual lives within a changing world. The Indian megaliths demonstrate a critical truth about this global phenomenon. The tradition was not a rigid blueprint that simply vanished. Here, it was a living, breathing part of the culture, seamlessly woven into local social structures and evolving religious beliefs. It adapted, persisted, and transformed over more than a millennium. This incredible adaptability, this capacity to find new meaning in ancient forms, may be the ultimate key to understanding the hidden chronology. It was not the unchanging stones that survived, but the powerful ideas they represented, ideas about memory, honor, and our connection to the cosmos that could be endlessly reborn in new lands. Across the sea, the Korean peninsula reveals a landscape utterly transformed by this ancient tradition. Here, megalithic architecture reached a density unmatched anywhere else on Earth, with an estimated 40,000 dolmens, locally known as Goindol, scattered across the countryside. This staggering concentration earned the sites a designation as a UNESCO World Heritage Treasure, a global recognition of their profound significance. These structures were primarily built during the first millennium before the Common Era, and they exhibit a remarkable consistency in design. The most common form is the northern table type, a dramatic silhouette of an enormous, often multi-ton capstone resting squarely on 2 or 4 smaller supporting stones, creating a powerful and enduring table of stone. The pattern of their placement across the peninsula is a map of a changing world. Their distribution aligns almost perfectly with the spread of 2 revolutionary technologies, bronze metalworking and wet rice agriculture. This is no coincidence. The arrival of rice farming created settled, productive communities capable of producing surplus food. This new wealth and stability allowed for the rise of powerful chiefdoms. In this context, the dolmens were far more than simple memorials. Erecting such a massive, permanent stone required immense communal effort and resources. Therefore, each one likely served as a powerful territorial marker, a stone declaration of a chieftain's authority over the land and its people. The sheer number of these monuments points to a society where this practice was not just occasional but fundamental, a deeply ingrained ritual that reinforced social order and cultural identity for generations. The Korean Goindol offer a pristine case study, showing us how the abstract megalithic impulse could crystallize into the very bedrock of a region's political and spiritual life. This pattern of stone defining territory and identity would repeat itself, but in forms we are only beginning to recognize. This architectural tradition found its final, most monumental form on the island chain of Japan. During the Kofun period, beginning around 250 years after the Common Era, the landscape itself was reshaped into symbols of immense power. Enormous earthen mounds, some stretching longer than 400 meters, were constructed in a distinct keyhole shape when viewed from above. The largest of these, the Dazen Kofun, is a tomb so vast it ranks among the largest ever built anywhere on Earth. These were not the communal resting places of earlier times, but the exclusive, state-sponsored monuments of a rising imperial elite. While the mounds are earthen, the heart of each structure reveals the familiar language of megalithic architecture. Deep within, the burial chambers were carefully constructed from massive, fitted stone slabs, creating a durable sanctuary for the honored individual. The entire complex was often encircled by moats, creating islands of the sacred, and the slopes were adorned with thousands of unique terracotta sculptures called haniwa. These figures depicted warriors, servants, animals, and houses, forming a silent, ceramic court to accompany the ruler into the afterlife. The Japanese Kofun represent a critical evolution in our story. Here, the ancient impulse to build big was no longer a decentralized community effort. It was harnessed and directed by a centralized state, transforming a spiritual practice into a powerful tool for projecting political authority and dynastic legitimacy. The sheer scale of labor required to move such volumes of earth and stone was a public declaration of control, a statement that could not be ignored. This demonstrates the ultimate flexibility of the megalithic idea, proving it could be adapted to serve the needs of an emerging empire just as effectively as it served a small island community. If this tradition could evolve into such a grand, formalized expression in Japan, what other forms might it have taken as it traveled across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean? The vast Pacific Ocean holds a final, dramatic chapter in this global story. On the remote island of Rapa Nui, known to the world as Easter Island, the megalithic tradition reached its last and most iconic frontier. Here, between the 13th and 16th centuries, a remarkable society carved nearly 1,000 monumental statues from the soft rock of a volcanic crater. These are the Moai, towering figures with solemn, elongated faces and heavy brows, their backs perpetually turned to the sea as they watch over the island's interior. For generations, their method of transport was the central mystery, giving rise to tales of lost giants and ancient magic. Yet recent experimental archaeology has revealed a surprisingly human-scale solution. By carefully rocking the multi-ton statues from side to side with a complex system of ropes, teams could effectively walk them across the landscape, a slow, deliberate procession that transformed an engineering puzzle into a manageable, coordinated effort. This discovery demystifies the process, but it makes the underlying motivation even more profound. The Moai were not just art, they were the physical embodiment of deified ancestors. Each statue represented a powerful lineage, and the act of carving, moving, and erecting one was a sacred duty, a way of ensuring the continued protection and favor of those who came before. This spiritual drive fueled an incredible societal effort, a competition between clans that pushed the island's resources to their absolute limit. The quarry produced ever larger and more elaborate statues, while the intensive use of timber for rollers and ropes combined with other pressures led to widespread deforestation. The very ambition that defined their culture, this profound desire to honor their ancestors in stone, ultimately contributed to an ecological turning point that reshaped their entire world. The silent Moai stand today not only as monuments to human ingenuity and belief, but also as a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between monumental ambition and the environmental limits of a fragile home. High in the Andes, the stone walls of Sacsayhuamán whisper of a mastery that defies simple explanation. Here, the Inca did not merely build with massive stones, they sculpted the living rock into a monumental puzzle. Individual blocks, some weighing more than 100 tons, were shaped into complex polygonal forms, each one a unique piece that locks perfectly with its neighbors. The joints between these colossal stones are so exquisitely tight that even the thinnest blade cannot find a gap. This was not a feat of brute force, but of breathtaking geometric intelligence, an architecture without mortar that has withstood centuries of powerful earthquakes. The stones, in their brilliant design, are allowed to dance and settle during a tremor before clicking flawlessly back into place. This engineering marvel, built during the 15th century, feels like the peak of a very long tradition. It was the culmination of a deep-rooted Andean knowledge of stone, a craft perfected over generations, but the purpose of this fortress above Cusco was twofold. On one hand, it was a formidable stronghold, its zigzagging walls a statement of military might. On the other, it was a symbol carved in granite, a declaration of the Inca emperor's absolute authority and his divine right to rule. The seamless stonework was a physical manifestation of a seamless empire, demonstrating a control over the very fabric of the world that was meant to inspire both awe and obedience. This represents a fascinating evolution in our global story, where the ancient megalithic impulse was channeled into a highly functional and explicitly political language. The stones were no longer just portals to the afterlife or cosmic clocks, they were the bedrock of an imperial identity. If such a sophisticated tradition could flourish in the high Andes, what other isolated continents might have developed their own unique dialects in this hidden, global language of stone? The colossal stone heads of the Olmec gaze out from the jungles of Mesoamerica with an expression of silent, ancient power. Carved from single blocks of basalt, each of these massive sculptures possesses unique, individualized features, from their distinctive helmets to their full lips and broad noses, leading many to believe they are portraits of formidable rulers. The sheer effort behind their creation is staggering. These stones, weighing up to 20 tons, were quarried from the Tuxtla Mountains and transported over 80 kilometers through swampy lowlands, all accomplished without the wheel or domesticated animals to aid in the haul. This feat of logistics and collective labor speaks to a highly organized society, one capable of mobilizing its people to honor its leaders in the most permanent medium imaginable. Centuries later, the Maya would build upon this foundational impulse, taking megalithic architecture to breathtaking new heights. Their cityscapes were dominated by towering limestone pyramids, precisely aligned to capture the solstice sun or the path of Venus. Within their palaces, they engineered corbel vaulted ceilings, a technique where stones are layered inward until they meet at the peak, creating a strong, stable roof without any true arch. The surfaces of these structures were then transformed into intricate storybooks, covered in deeply carved hieroglyphs and detailed reliefs that recorded the histories of kings and the movements of gods. Here in the Americas, this monumental tradition developed in complete isolation from the cultures of Europe, Asia, or Africa. There was no shared blueprint, no wandering stoneworkers to carry the idea across an ocean. Yet the same profound human drive is unmistakably present, the same desire to reshape the world on a grand scale, to immortalize power in stone, and to anchor a society's beliefs and identity against the relentless passage of time. This parallel emergence raises a question that goes to the very heart of our shared humanity. Is there something universal in the human spirit that compels us to build big, to leave a mark so enduring it can whisper across millennia? North America presents a fascinating case in our global story, a landscape where the monumental impulse expressed itself not in towering stone circles, but in earth itself. Across the Mississippi River Valley, the city of Cahokia rose to become a preeminent center between approximately 1050 and 1350 of the Common Era. At its heart stood Monk's Mound, an earthen pyramid of such immense scale that its base covers more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This was not a solitary structure, but the focal point of a vast urban complex featuring over 100 other mounds, arranged around grand plazas that hosted ceremonies and markets. The society that built this was a sophisticated, stratified chiefdom, capable of organizing thousands of workers to move millions of baskets of earth. This was architecture on a continental scale, yet it was architecture of soil, not stone. It served as a sacred cosmology made physical, with the mounds acting as platforms for temples and the homes of elites, literally elevating them closer to the spiritual realm. The entire city was aligned with celestial events, its central axis marking the sun's path at the equinox, proving that the drive to encode cosmic knowledge into the landscape was a universal human trait, whether the medium was earth, as here, or stone, as we have seen elsewhere. Meanwhile, in the forests of New England, a very different sight has captured the public imagination. Mystery Hill, often romantically dubbed America's Stonehenge, is a complex of low stone walls and carved chambers. While much of what we see today was likely shaped by 19th-century farmers clearing their land, its popular name reveals a deep and telling desire, a longing to connect the ancient history of the New World with the megalithic traditions of the Old. This yearning, while often misplaced, underscores a powerful truth about how we view these mysteries. Yet more credible and culturally significant stone structures do exist across North America. For generations, Native American communities constructed intricate stone fish weirs in rivers, clever labyrinths that guided fish into traps, representing a brilliant and practical application of stonework that sustained entire communities. Far to the southwest, the Pueblo cultures demonstrated a masterful command of stone in their magnificent cliff dwellings and sprawling villages. At places like Choco Canyon, they erected great houses with walls of precisely fitted sandstone blocks, aligning entire complexes to the cycles of the sun and moon. So while the classic image of the solitary standing stone is rare here, the fundamental principles of the megalithic world were very much alive. North American cultures shared the same profound drive to reshape their world on a grand scale, to build monuments that reflected their cosmology, sustained their people, and proclaimed their identity. They simply chose a different vocabulary, speaking the same universal language of human ambition, but writing it in earth and adaptive stone. The sands of the Sahara hold a secret far older than the pharaohs. At a place called Nabta Playa in southern Egypt, a stone circle stands as a silent testament to an ancient sky watcher's genius. Built around 6,500 years ago, this arrangement of megaliths is a contemporary of its European cousins, but its purpose was uniquely precise. Researchers believe this was one of the world's first known astronomical devices. Its stones aligned to mark the summer solstice and the rising of key stars. This was not a monument built by a settled agricultural empire, but by a nomadic pastoral people who followed the rains. In the heart of a green Sahara that has long since vanished, they looked to the heavens and built a calendar in stone to guide their movements through a changing world. This site rewrites the narrative, placing Africa at the very forefront of humanity's quest to understand the cosmos through architecture. How many other such centers of ancient knowledge still lie buried beneath the desert's shifting dunes? Millennia later and far to the south, in the highlands of Ethiopia, the same fundamental impulse to build in stone reached a breathtaking scale. The kingdom of Aksum, a powerful trading empire that flourished from the 1st to the 10th century, expressed its might through gigantic, intricately carved stelae. These towering granite obelisks, some reaching over 30 meters high, were funerary markers for the elite, soaring representations of multi-story buildings complete with false doors and windows. The technical mastery required to quarry, transport, and erect these monoliths is staggering, a sophisticated stone-working tradition that echoes across the ages. The legacy of these stones is so powerful that several were transported as trophies to Rome, where they were re-erected, a testament to Aksum's far-reaching influence. From the prehistoric astronomers of the Sahara to the imperial architects of the Horn, Africa's contributions are not footnotes, they are foundational chapters. They add crucial depth and geographical breadth to our hidden chronology, proving that the language of stone was spoken with unique eloquence across this vast continent. We are left with a silent map of stone stretching across the globe, and it presents us with one of history's most profound puzzles. How do we explain the uncanny resemblances, the shared impulse to build massively, separated by oceans and millennia? Scholars have wrestled with this for generations, and their debates have crystallized into two compelling, yet seemingly opposing, schools of thought. On one side stands the theory of independent invention. This idea suggests that humanity, no matter where it flourishes, shares a common cognitive toolkit. When different societies reach a certain level of social complexity, they may naturally arrive at similar solutions to universal human needs. The need to honor ancestors, to mark territory, to create a communal identity, or to track the seasons could logically lead various cultures, entirely on their own, to the most durable and imposing material available, stone. It is a story of parallel human genius, of the same idea being born multiple times in separate cradles of civilization. The other major theory is cultural diffusion. This view imagines a more connected ancient world than we often assume. Proponents point to the apparent trail of megalithic sites, with the oldest known examples like Göbekli Tepe in the Middle East, followed by clusters in the Mediterranean, and then a clear spread along the Atlantic coast of Europe. They argue this is not a coincidence, but a chronological pathway. They highlight the shared focus on astronomical alignments, from the lunar cycles at Callanish to the solstice sunrise at Newgrange, suggesting this was a specific body of knowledge that was carried along by ancient seafarers, traders, or migrating groups. The ocean, in this view, was not a barrier but a highway for the exchange of ideas. Yet the critics of diffusion raise a powerful counterpoint. They ask us to look not just at the similarities, but at the profound differences. The purpose of these structures varied wildly. The Maltese Hypogeum is an underground acoustic sanctuary, while the Korean Goindol are territorial markers for powerful chiefs, and the Moai of Rapa Nui are deified ancestral figures. The styles are equally distinct, from the Porthole Dolmens of the Caucasus to the keyhole mounds of Japan. If this was a single blueprint passed from one culture to another, why did its final form change so dramatically in every new location? The truth likely does not lie in choosing one theory over the other, but in recognizing that both processes were at work in a complex, interwoven dance. In some places, like the Atlantic facade of Europe, the evidence for the diffusion of core ideas along sea routes is incredibly strong. The shared architectural grammar of dolmens and alignments suggests a connected cultural community. Yet in other cases, like the Americas, which developed in complete isolation, the monumental tradition clearly arose independently. The Olmec heads and the Maya pyramids are a testament to what the human mind can conceive on its own. This is not a simple either-or debate, but a spectrum, perhaps a seed of an idea, a whisper of building big for the gods and the stars, did travel across vast distances. But when that seed landed in new soil, it was nurtured by local beliefs, adapted to local materials, and transformed by local genius into something uniquely its own. The global map of megaliths is not a single message from one source, but a chorus of countless voices, each singing a similar song in their own distinct dialect. Perhaps the most powerful thread connecting these far-flung stones is written not on the earth, but in the sky itself. This shared celestial language forms one of the most compelling arguments for a connected ancient mind. When we look beyond the sheer size of the stones, we find a deep and recurring obsession with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. This was not a casual interest. It was a fundamental human imperative, a drive to understand the cycles that govern their world, from the changing seasons that dictated planting and harvest to the longer rhythms that defined time itself. These massive stone structures provided the perfect, permanent solution. They became colossal calendars and fixed observatories, their alignments carved into the landscape with an accuracy that still astounds us today. This astronomical blueprint appears with stunning consistency. At Newgrange, a single beam of sunlight pierces a dark tomb at the winter solstice, a dramatic symbol of rebirth. At the Callanish stones, the complex arrangement captures the moon's slow, 18-year cycle, a generational clock built in granite. Across the ocean, the Maya oriented their towering pyramids to the path of Venus and the solstice sun, weaving celestial motion into the very fabric of their cities. The fundamental principles are so similar, it begs the question, was this knowledge discovered independently or was it carried? One school of thought champions independent invention. It suggests that any culture, anywhere, once it develops skilled sky watchers, will naturally discover these celestial patterns. The sun always returns to the same point on the horizon. The moon follows its predictable dance. It is a logical human response to use the most durable material available to mark these cycles, creating a stable reference point that could guide rituals and agriculture for centuries. In this view, the similarity is not evidence of contact but of parallel intellectual triumph, a universal human genius arriving at the same profound conclusions. Yet the counter-argument is equally fascinating. Could this specific knowledge of how to encode astronomy into architecture represent a core piece of cultural software, a treasured understanding passed from one learned group to another? Imagine ancient seafarers, traders, or migrating priests carrying not just goods but ideas. They might have shared the crucial understanding that by aligning massive stones to a specific star rise or a solstice sunset, a community could anchor its calendar, its rituals, and its very identity to the cosmos. This was powerful, practical knowledge that would have been immensely valuable to any emerging chiefdom or temple elite. The patterns are too precise, the focus too specialized to be purely coincidental. This knowledge may have traveled along the same routes as precious stones and rare shells, a commodity of the mind that helped shape the ancient world. So we are left with a beautiful puzzle. Did countless cultures each look up and learn the sky's secrets on their own? Or did a few key minds first decode the celestial clock, with their understanding then rippling out across the globe, to be adapted and reinvented by every new culture it touched? The vast, open ocean was not the barrier we once imagined, but a connective tissue between distant shores. The maritime capabilities of ancient peoples are consistently underestimated, a point proven by the incredible voyages of the Lapita people. These skilled navigators, using only their knowledge of stars, winds, and waves, successfully colonized the remote islands of the vast Pacific, crossing thousands of kilometers of open water. In the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians established a sprawling trade network, their ships carrying goods and ideas from one end of the sea to the other. This evidence forces a compelling question. If these cultures could achieve such feats of exploration in their eras, could even earlier, unknown explorers have traversed these same oceans long before recorded history? The distribution of megalithic sites offers a powerful clue, as they frequently cluster along coastlines, tracing the edges of continents like a map of ancient sea lanes. From the dense concentrations along the Atlantic facade of Europe to the thousands of dolmens dotting the Korean peninsula, the stones seem to follow the water. These coastal and riverine routes functioned as the information superhighways of the ancient world. A trading ship would not carry just pottery, rare stones, or metals. It would be a floating repository of knowledge, its crew sharing stories, myths, and accounts of distant lands. In this constant, low-level exchange, the concept of building with massive stones could have been transmitted as easily as a new design for a pot or a better way to navigate. This process did not require a mass migration of people. Instead, it could have been the work of a few highly skilled individuals, perhaps master artisans who traveled with trading expeditions. These knowledgeable builders could have shared the core principles of quarrying, moving, and erecting megaliths, a technical know-how that was then adapted and perfected by local communities using their own materials and for their own unique spiritual purposes. The idea itself was the cargo, light enough to carry on a boat but profound enough to reshape a landscape. The engineering behind these monuments is as compelling as their purpose. Moving a stone weighing many tons seems an impossible task without modern machinery, yet our ancestors developed a brilliant and practical toolkit of techniques to achieve it. Experiments and studies of traditional cultures have shown that methods like levering, rocking, and the use of sledges could manage these colossal weights. For moving stones over longer distances, teams would place them on a sledge and pull it over a track of lubricated wooden rollers, a slow but effective process that turned impossible weight into manageable, rhythmic labor. Quarrying the stone itself was its own science. Workers would often build fires directly against the rock face, heating it intensely before dousing it with cold water. The sudden temperature change caused the stone to fracture along clean, predictable lines, allowing them to pry out perfectly shaped blocks. Once a stone reached its destination, the challenge of standing it upright remained. This was likely accomplished with a frame levers and earthen ramps, using gravity and careful pivoting to guide the monolith into its final, vertical position. This entire process from quarry to erection represents a sophisticated understanding of physics. The knowledge of leverage, friction, and fracture mechanics was a form of high technology in its own era. This practical toolkit for moving massive weight was a valuable and portable body of knowledge. It was not the design of a specific monument that may have traveled, but the underlying engineering principles themselves. A master builder who understood how to orchestrate these techniques could share that core knowledge, which local communities could then adapt to their own granite, limestone, or sandstone. This shared technological foundation could explain how cultures separated by vast distances all arrived at the same stunning ability to reshape their world with stone. The true genius lies not in a single blueprint, but in this adaptable, transferable science of weight and motion. Behind every silent stone stands the echo of a living community. These monuments are not just feats of engineering, they are profound social achievements, demanding a level of organization that forces us to rethink ancient societies. To move a 20-ton block, you need more than strong ropes and wooden rollers. You need a coordinated labor force, a shared purpose, and a system for feeding and housing everyone involved. This implies a deep social structure, whether it was a command economy directed by a powerful chief, or a collective effort fueled by a unifying spiritual belief. The very type of structure they built often reveals the nature of their society. Consider the early phases of Göbekli Tepe, constructed by hunter-gatherers. Here, there is no evidence of a king or a permanent ruling class. Instead, the massive pillars and intricate carvings suggest a different model, a cooperative venture where disparate bands came together, likely seasonally, driven by a shared ritual purpose. This was social organization built around ceremony, proving that monumentality does not always require a rigid hierarchy. Contrast this with the later Egyptian pyramids or the Japanese Kofun mounds. These were not communal projects in the same sense. They were explicit demonstrations of a ruler's absolute power, statements of control over both people and resources. The sheer scale of labor required to build them was a public declaration of the state's authority, a permanent reminder of who held the power to command such an effort. So when we look at a megalith, we are also reading a social blueprint. A solitary standing stone in a field might mark the territory of a single family clan. A vast, complex cairn used for collective burial could signify a society that valued lineage and shared ancestry over individual power. And a towering statue like a Moai on Rapa Nui speaks to a competitive society where rival clans pushed each other to build bigger and more elaborate tributes to their ancestors. The stones themselves are a frozen record of human relationships, telling us who had the power to organize and what ideals were important enough to literally set in stone for all time. These silent stones were far more than calendars or tombs. Their greatest power lay in their symbolism, a deep need to carve meaning into the very bones of the earth. Think of a solitary standing stone placed on a high hill. To a modern eye, it might seem like a simple marker, but for the people who raised it, that stone was a declaration. It stated, "We are here. This land is ours." It connected them to their ancestors who were buried nearby and to the generations who would follow, transforming an anonymous piece of geography into a place of memory and identity. This was the act of turning a natural landscape into a cultural one, a sacred map written in granite. The stones became fixed points in a spiritual geography, linking the three realms of existence. The earth itself was the middle world of the living. The chambers and tombs dug deep into the ground were portals to the underworld, the realm of ancestors and spirits. And the towering stones, aligned with the sun and moon, reached for the celestial realm of the gods above. A site like Newgrange is a perfect embodiment of this, a single structure that functions as a tomb, an astronomical observatory, and a territorial claim all at once. This fusion of purpose reveals a world view where the spiritual and the political were inseparable. The ability to command the labor to build such a monument was the ultimate source of power for a chieftain or a priestly elite. By erecting a dolmen that would endure for millennia, a leader was not just honoring the dead, they were legitimizing their own right to rule, proving their connection to the divine and their control over the community. The immense effort was never for mere practical utility. You do not need a 100-ton stone to mark a grave. You need it to create a legacy. The stone was permanent, unchanging in a world of seasons and generations. By building in stone, these societies sought to make their beliefs, their rulers, and their memory just as permanent. This profound desire for meaning, for a connection to something larger than a single lifetime, is the true thread that winds through every culture that ever lifted a massive stone and set it carefully into place. The silent stones are finally beginning to speak, their secrets unlocked not by shovels alone, but by the silent gaze of lasers from the sky. Light detection and ranging, or LiDAR, is peeling back the dense green canopy of jungles in Mesoamerica and Southeast Asia, revealing a hidden geography of human ambition. What was once an impenetrable forest floor is now a digital map showing the ghostly outlines of thousands of unknown structures, from sprawling ceremonial centers to networks of roads and plazas. This technology is fundamentally rewriting the history of entire regions, proving that what we thought were empty wildernesses were in fact densely populated, highly organized landscapes. The sheer scale of these discoveries suggests our current understanding of ancient societies is just a fragment of a much larger story. Meanwhile, in the quiet of a laboratory, another kind of investigation is unfolding. Advanced software developed for archaeoastronomy allows researchers to turn back the cosmic clock, calculating the precise positions of stars and planets millennia ago. With this digital tool, they can stand at the heart of a stone circle and confirm with mathematical certainty that a specific alignment to a solstice sunrise or a lunar extreme was not a happy accident, but a deliberate, engineered act. This moves the study of these sites from speculation to scientific fact, proving the builders possessed a sophisticated, codified knowledge of the sky. Yet perhaps the most intimate revelations come from the builders themselves. DNA analysis of the very small traces of genetic material preserved in megalithic tombs is tracing the family lines of those who raised these monuments. Scientists can now determine if the people buried in a grand communal tomb were close relatives, revealing a society organized around powerful kinship groups. They can even track the astonishing journeys of individuals, finding that some of the people interred within a British stone circle spent their early lives hundreds of miles away near the Mediterranean. This paints a picture of a surprisingly mobile and interconnected ancient world, where ideas and people traveled vast distances. Each of these technological leaps peels back a layer of the mystery, but they do not provide simple answers. Instead, they reveal a tapestry of human history far more rich, complex, and interconnected than we ever dreamed. The hidden chronology of our planet, written in stone and earth, is slowly, patiently being brought into the light. So we can now trace a tentative timeline across the globe, a sequence of stone that spans an almost unimaginable 10,000 years. This hidden chronology opens not with farmers or kings, but with the hunter-gatherer communities at Göbekli, Tepe around 9,600 years before the Common Era. Here, the foundational idea of monumental stone architecture was already fully formed, a stunning genesis point. Then, millennia later, a powerful wave of this tradition emerged along the Atlantic coast of Europe, beginning around 4,500 years before the Common Era. This was not an isolated event. but a connected cultural phenomenon that saw the erection of thousands of dolmens and standing stone alignments from Portugal to Scotland. By 3,000 years before the Common Era, this pulse of activity intensified dramatically in the British Isles, giving us the early phases of Stonehenge, while simultaneously distinct megalithic cultures began to flower in the highlands of the Caucasus and across the Indian subcontinent. This was a period of explosive diversification. The tradition then demonstrates its incredible stamina, appearing independently in East Asia. In Korea, the landscape became dense with dolmens from 1,000 years before the Common Era, and in Japan, the practice evolved into the colossal keyhole-shaped Kofun mounds centuries later. Finally, in the last 1,000 years, we witnessed the last great flowerings of this ancient impulse in the remote corners of the world, from the Moai of Rapa Nui to the earthquake-defying walls of the Inca. This is not a neat, linear story of diffusion from a single source. It is a complex tapestry of human innovation, a series of powerful pulses and independent flowerings. Some connections are clear, like the shared language along the Atlantic seaboard. Others, like the isolated emergence in the Americas, stand as powerful testaments to the universal human mind. This proposed sequence reveals a profound truth. The desire to build massively in stone is not the product of any one culture or time. It is a deep-seated human potential, a seed that could be carried across oceans or could sprout spontaneously from the soil of any continent, given the right conditions of belief, social organization, and a shared yearning to reach for the eternal. This hidden chronology of stone leaves us not with a single answer, but with a far more profound truth about our shared human past. It is the story not of a lost superculture, but of the incredible potential that exists within humanity itself. From the Atlantic's stormy shores to the most remote Pacific islands, our ancestors demonstrated a universal drive to reshape their world, to reach for the heavens, and to honor their predecessors on a breathtaking scale. The patterns we see etched across the globe could be the result of ideas carried on ancient currents, of brilliant minds independently solving the same grand puzzles, or most likely, a beautiful and complex dance between the two. What remains undeniable is the sheer scale of this phenomenon. It stands as a timeless testament to human ingenuity, to our deep spiritual yearnings, and to our innate capacity to organize and achieve the seemingly impossible. These silent stones still stand, their weathered surfaces challenging us to listen closely, to piece together the fragments of a story that belongs to all of us. We would love to hear your thoughts on this incredible journey in the comments below. And if you are eager to continue exploring the deep mysteries of our past, be sure to subscribe for more.